Thank you. Welcome to the 13th of March 2024 meeting of the Combined Authority Transport and Infrastructure Committee held in the meeting room of Cambridge City Council. I'd like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who have joined us today here in Cambridge, and also those who are watching the meeting on our live stream. The Combined Authority allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to take pictures and use social media during the meeting. Can I ask, though, that everyone present turns their mobile phones to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place? Do feel free just to do a double check now, as I am doing. There are no fire drills scheduled for today. This feels a little bit on the loud side. I'm getting a tiny bit of feedback. I don't know if that's... we'll wait till our tech crew return for that. There are no fire drills scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting. We will all move to the muster point. It says the High Street, but I assume it's actually the Market Square. But do we have an updated muster point? Yeah. I would remind members and officers that the meeting will be recorded. So we're going to move on to item 1 of the agenda. This is announcements, apologies for absence, and declarations of interest. There are no announcements. Would the governance manager let us know of any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've had apologies from the Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Does any member wish to declare a disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest in any items being considered today? Yes.
Yes. Yes, I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary interest as I am a trustee of the FACT services, and I know there's an item on here which I want to speak on, which is to do with buses. Thank you.
Thank you. And as always, please remember, you can declare interest at any point during the meeting. If you have an interest that you need to declare, just keep your hands up and I will notice that you've got your hand raised and I will make sure that we have logged that. So item 2 is the minutes. Is the committee happy to approve the minutes from 17th of January as an accurate record and to note the action log? Okay, I see no objections, so we will take the minutes as approved and the action log as noted. I'm just signing the minutes here. Everyone's in a different place. Passing it down the wrong way. And I should have said on apologies that the Mayor is sorry he can't be here today. He has another Combined Authority meeting that clashes, so we have a lot of business to get through at the moment at the Combined Authority. It's not possible always for us all to be at both. So item 3 is public questions. We have received 6 questions from members of the public, all of which have been published on the website and circulated to members. I will ask the governance manager to read out the questions from those people who are unable to attend today, and I will invite those who have joined us today to come to the table to ask their questions. Questions will be taken in the order that they were submitted, and I will give a response to each one in turn. Those responses will be published on the website after the meeting. I should also say, of course, if those responses kind of raise further questions, I'm more than happy to answer those. If any of the questioners would like to get in touch, really, really happy to do so. I'm appreciative it's quite a formal process, but we are obviously all keen to engage in that informal discussion as well. And I believe we do have, so I can see it's Sarah, isn't it? So we do have question 4, Sarah from Cambridge Sustainable Travel Alliance in the room. And do we also have Cambridge area bus users as well? I think they were hoping to come, but we don't. So I think all the others will be read out by Jo. So Jo, do you want to start by reading out the first question, please?
Thank you. Yes, the first question is from Peter Wake from Rail Future East Anglia. The question is, Rail Future East Anglia is pleased to see from the agenda pack that Network Rail's options appraisal report will be discussed at the Transport and Infrastructure Committee meeting in June. This report was scheduled to be published by the end of March. Is the report still expected to be published by the end of March, and can the CPCA send a copy of the report to Rail Future East Anglia as soon as it is published, rather than having to wait until the agenda pack for the June meeting?
Thank you, Joe. And can we just note that's actually Peter Wakefield? So that seems to have just, so we can make
Apologies, I
sure
will
that's
make-
correct for the
I will
minutes,
make a
please.
note of that, yeah.
Network Rail has shared its draft engineering options appraisal report, and in April will deliver the second phase of the study, which covers the cost and economic analysis. The Combined Authority absolutely recognises the significant importance of the Network Rail report, and we will undertake a strategic review by officers and partners. In this regard, active engagement will be absolutely essential, and we will need to collaborate with members and key stakeholders to contribute to the agenda item for the Transport and Infrastructure Committee, which is currently scheduled for June 2024, and I really hope we're going to be able to receive that report at that point. Thank you, Peter. Question 2, please.
Thank you, Chair. Question 2 is from Paul Hollinghurst, Cambridgeshire resident. In 2021, as part of its Making Connections work, the Greater Cambridge Partnership conducted a study on the future bus service needs of Cambridgeshire and published a plan which included a key bus corridor from Cambridge to St Neots via Cambourne. Currently, the services for Cambourne on this corridor are poor, with the City 4 from Cambridge to Cambourne suffering from serious problems with punctuality and reliability, and the 18 from Cambourne to St Neots being infrequent and often not serving the east of St Neots, missing the railway station, Loves Farm and Wintringham developments from mid-afternoon onwards. The Precept investment is an opportunity to improve bus services and includes improved frequency Cambourne to Cambridge. However, there is no proposal to improve the service from Cambourne to St Neots. Can the committee comment on why this link, which was identified as a key bus corridor by the GCP through studies and consultations, is not being considered for improvement under the CPCA precept? Has the GCP study been assessed by the CPCA?
Thank you, Paul. And we do also have an item on this later in the agenda, and it's possible that our bus team would be keen to add more at this point. So feel free to do so, Andrew, if you'd like to then. I think one of the key things to emphasise here is that there is an awful lot that we need to do to reform buses right across the region. And at the Combined Authority, we absolutely recognise that, and that is why we are also looking at how we can reform our bus network and system more broadly. The importance of improving those connections between Cambourne and Cambridge was recognised in the Precept funding investment list, and that improvement is initially focused on Service 4 and looking to work with the commercial operator on options to improve the frequency and reliability of that service. And work on that is ongoing, so we can make sure residents who need an improved bus service get it later this year. However, we are also exploring with bus operators how Section 106 developer funding for the West Cambourne development could be used to provide a service linking the site with Cambridge and St Neots, with an ambition to open this out to other parts of Cambourne. And I absolutely take your point that it is so important that where possible railway stations are part of that connectivity, and I suspect that's going to come up more as we discuss other items through this meeting. In addition, we are continuing to encourage Stagecoach to serve Cambourne with the 905 service. We know there are significant concerns around that service at the moment, but as this operates on a commercial basis, it's at their discretion. So again, part of this is thinking about what we can do in the longer term with our reform of the bus system to allow us to be more joined up as a genuine network here. Thank you. Question 3, please.
Thank you, Chair. Question 3 is from Simon Martin, who's a resident of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough area. At each TIC meeting, the Director's Highlight Report contains statistics on public transport in the CPCA region. These are on pages 17 and 18 of your agenda pack this month. I've been keenly following online each meeting, very eager to see better public transport in this region, but disappointed that these statistics regularly haven't had a mention in TIC meetings. Late last year, there was news from neighbouring Norfolk of usage increased by 18% in the last year, and the number of fare-paying passengers now at 107% compared to pre-pandemic baseline figures. In January this year, there was further news from Norfolk of Connect Bus announcing an increase of 2.6 million individual passenger journeys, 16% up April to December 2022 to 2023. Yet what we do have in our area, more cuts and reductions from at least one well-established operator due to low passenger numbers not covering their operating costs, this suggests the situation here isn't as positive. How does Cambridgeshire and Peterborough compare with the national picture? Better or worse public transport growth and recovery from pre-COVID figures? How does the region compare with neighbouring counties, other M10 areas and London? What percentage are we up or down, like neighbouring Norfolk? Information like this doesn't appear to be getting reported to the committee. Currently, there's no RAG rating or similar system to allow councillors to be informed on month-on-month and year-on-year progress. Lacking analysis, context, and any real idea if the interventions, financial and other, by CPCA into public transport are actually heading in the right direction or not. Therefore, my question is, will the combined authority ensure the transport statistics in the report are covered at each meeting going forward and introduce new useful and relevant metrics which will be reported to the committee and the board?
Thank you, Simon. That's incredibly helpful. There's a lot in here, so I'm going to give you a summary answer. We're obviously happy to come back on further details as needed. It's really important that monitoring and evaluation and looking at appropriate metrics is something that we do and we take seriously, and that's something you'd have probably also noticed is happening at the Combined Authority board level as well, as we look at how we can monitor our progress as a whole authority. So this is very much in line with that. And we need to understand what's working well and what's working not so well. And to reassure you, this is also something that we are keen to hear more of as a Transport and Infrastructure Committee. And we are in discussion with officers about ensuring that we can do that as effectively as possible as part of our regular committee cycles. So we absolutely welcome this question. Particularly your points around patronage of the network and the reliability and punctuality of services, that's really key. And we've asked officers to begin work on how to best collate and visualise such information to inform a better bus network. And that follows on from some really effective enhanced monitoring of contracted routes, which was undertaken during the Network Review of 2023, and I think provides a really excellent model for how we can take this forward. Now, it is fair to say patronage stats at a route level are very difficult to collate and put into public forums because routes are not always controlled directly by us, they are commercial as well. And where there are commercial routes, we can't just insist on taking that data and putting that in the public space. However, officers will be engaging further with bus operators to see what is possible. High-level stats for each region are provided by the Department of Transport, and we will put a link in the written response to this. The Combined Authority region grew from 12.4 to 17.3 million passenger journeys from 22 to 23. This was one of the highest growths in patronage by percentage captured. However, it is important to note this is still below pre-pandemic levels of patronage, and our officer team are working to deliver at pace on the range of investments that we can put in place to grow patronage further. We're also monitoring other key stats such as concessionary card applications and usage, and we will be ensuring a clear monitoring process for the £1 under 25 fares, which will shortly be introduced. Thank you. Now, question 4. Sarah, thank you for waiting. We do have you here in person. Where are we asking you to come?
Good morning, everyone. I'm asking my question on behalf of Cambridgeshire Sustainable Travel Alliance. We're an alliance of 31 organisations active in the areas of transport, environment and health. Cambridgeshire County Council's electric cargo bike Try Before You Buy scheme, which is run by Alliance member organisation Outspoken Cycles on behalf of Cambridgeshire County Council, has been a great success. The scheme offers trials of e-cargo bikes for both businesses and families of up to 8 weeks for businesses and 2 weeks for families. So participants have an extended period in which to test out how the bikes work for them. It's been so popular that at the time of January's CPCA board meeting, there was a 4-week waiting list to try a bike. Over the lifetime of the scheme, there have been over 160 trials and over 65% of participants have decided to purchase a cargo bike after the trial period. A parent who's recently used the scheme said to me last week, "We wouldn't have bought a cargo bike if we hadn't been able to try it using a council scheme, as they're quite expensive. The try before you buy scheme gave us confidence about the handling and usefulness of the bike. Now we use the cargo bike for nursery drop-offs and pickups, amongst other journeys, which we were previously doing by car." A local business owner told me last week as well that if you couldn't have tried, he's a handyman, if you couldn't have tried the bike, he wouldn't have gone ahead with the purchase. It was essential to try it, to have confidence to go ahead and buy it. The Try Before You Buy cargo bike scheme has been running since 2021, but is due to stop this spring when its funding comes to an end. Cambridgeshire Sustainable Travel Alliance was therefore very disappointed to read in the papers for this meeting that CPCA's 2 e-cargo bike bids were not successful. One proposed building on the existing Try Before You Buy scheme, adding additional bikes and expanding its geographical reach to Cambridgeshire market towns and Peterborough City. So my question is, will CPCA work with Cambridgeshire County Council and the Greater Cambridge Partnership to explore other funding sources so that businesses and residents are still able to explore how e-cargo bikes could work for them through a Try Before You Buy scheme?
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, we completely agree. I mean, Try Before You Buy schemes have got so many benefits. And in fact, I think, and Yo will correct me if I'm wrong, that the rather lovely e-bikes that I tried in our Leicester visit were on a Try Before You Buy. Was that right? And, you know, I think it does create a lot of confidence and it really helps to extend uses. So we were incredibly disappointed to learn that our bid for grant funding at this time was not successful. These schemes do form a really important part of our overarching transport strategy, and that's set out within the local transport and connectivity plan. So I can't give you any clear guarantees today. What I can say is that we will keep looking at how we can make this kind of scheme work because we think it's important. And I'm sorry that's not a more specific answer, but I do want to reassure you of our, we absolutely agree these are really important schemes.
Thank you. Can I ask a follow-up question?
I'm not, normally we don't take follow-ups. I think as you're here, please, I will allow you to do it in this instant as you're the only person that's here. I'm not setting a precedent by doing this, but as you've turned up and I had to give you quite a short answer, please do go ahead.
Thank you. One of the schemes that you applied for funding for covered shared use cargo bikes. I was just wondering if any approach had been made to Voy to see if they could consider expanding the range of bikes that they offer in Cambridge. There is a shared use cargo bike scheme in Hackney and Islington, I believe, run by Barrel Bikes. I was wondering if that had been explored as an option as well.
Thank you. I think what I will do with that is I've got officers mouthing at me. I'm assuming it's all right if I just pass over to Anna Graham just to briefly answer on that.
Okay. We have discussed the possibility of supplying e-cargo bikes with Voy, but it's something that they're not looking to extend into at the moment, but we will always keep looking at options and trying to see what we can do. Bit of a short answer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to get my wrist slapped for going from convention there, I think. But I'm using chair's privilege to ensure that we can get an answer to our public questioner there. We're now moving on to question 5 from Richard Wood, who is Secretary of the Cambridge Area Bus User Group. Jo, I think as Richard isn't here, are you able to read that out?
Yes, Chair. The question is, with reference to agenda item 10, bus network update, 2.2 bus network service improvements, 2.5 bus stop shelter improvements. Cambridge Area Bus Users and Cambridge Sustainable Travel Alliance congratulate students and their Youth Social Action Apprentice for a recent positive and constructive Cambridgeshire Buses Feedback Forum event at Long Road Sixth Form College, at which students, parents and the public engaged with the Mayor and representatives from Stagecoach, Whippet and Stevenson's about current services and potential new or enhanced routes. Both groups also welcome the establishment of a bus stop database for the region, together with a programme for improvements. Will the Mayor commit to the most open and transparent processes in these matters by working with bus operators to establish regular public bus feedback forum events with brief reports made available online, and to publishing the bus stop database and proposed improvements in an accessible format, e.g. a clickable map, in an accessible place on the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority website, with the opportunity for public comment through, e.g. drop-down menus for reporting deficiencies?
Thank you, Richard. And sorry not to see you in person today. It's really, really good to hear about this well-attended and useful event for feedback from students directly to the Mayor and bus operators. I know that the Mayor found it an incredibly helpful experience. I've also been attending some sessions with other local residents, and they're just so helpful. They're really, really useful. So absolutely, we want to work with groups like the Bus Users Group and the Travel Alliance to identify what sort of forums would be helpful in future. I think this is something that we should be looking at. I'm very aware that we don't want to make ourselves hostages to fortune here, but this should be something that is available broadly, and we need to see how we can make that work in a sustainable way. Regarding bus stops, this is a project underway with the aim to initially invest in a number of stops and shelters on the network. The recent audit found over 2,800 stops and shelters across the region, administered and managed through a number of methods. So the project will start with a targeted number of improvements. However, officers will be investigating governance of the infrastructure and how it can best be managed moving forward to ensure a safe, effective place for passengers to wait for their bus, and officers will also factor in how passengers can better report faults or requests for enhanced and new infrastructure. That's going to be very important that we work alongside colleagues in constituent councils at all levels to think about how we can kind of tag in on existing methods of reporting there as well. But we're really aware that this issue of bus stop infrastructure is really key in lots of places for people making the choice to use public transport. So thank you, Richard, as ever, for bringing a really helpful question there. And I think then we have question 6, which is from Anna Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the final question. In February this year, a woman cycling on the A1123, which runs between Huntingdon and St Ives, past Houghton and Whiten, was involved in a serious collision with a person driving a lorry. Newspaper reports from the following day say that she was taken to Addenbrooke's Hospital, where she remained in a critical condition. It is only 3 years since a man in his 70s cycling along this same stretch of road was killed in a collision with a person driving a car. This paper acknowledges that 2 of the challenges faced by the existing A141 and St Ives road network are road safety issues and risk of accidents, and a lack of active travel options. Indeed, there isn't currently a protected and segregated cycleway along the whole of the A1123, which is described in the paper as the key east-west link. Local communities have been campaigning for one for over a decade. What work under this project will take place to improve safety for people walking, wheeling and cycling along the A1123?
Thank you. That's a really powerful and important question. Road safety is everyone's business. It is certainly something that the Combined Authority takes very seriously. That's partly why we've put money into the budget for road safety measures and why we are getting much more involved in the Vision Zero initiative. And one of the things we absolutely have to do is ensure that in all the projects that we undertake, we are considering road safety as an absolute core of those projects, because we have to be working in a joined-up way on these things. There's a report coming in on the A141 later in the agenda, so I'm sure that members will have further questions they wish to ask on this. So at the moment, the A141 is at the technical evaluation stage, so no specific decisions have been made on the provision for the A1123. So we're working at the moment with partners to revalidate the original strategic outline business case, because there have been a range of changes to local and national policy that need to be taken into account. It's become incredibly apparent that further work is needed to assess the merits of both the kind of passenger transport initiatives and further options to look at road-based interventions that bring together passenger transport and active travel. So in addition to the 3 bypass solutions, our kids are developing a strategic public transport solution and a hybrid solution. So, and in those, active travel is going to form a fundamental and integral component. Part of the A1123 is also included in the local walking and cycling infrastructure plan, and road safety and active travel are high priorities in this scheme. So we will absolutely be looking at this as we go through this project to ensure that we monitor road safety issues at all points through that. Just to say, I believe we also received one more question which was submitted late. We won't be therefore able to answer that now, but we will ensure that answers are supplied in due course. So that ends the public questions section. We are now moving on to item 4, which is the forward plan. Are there any questions or comments on the forward plan, or can we take that as noted? Okay, the forward plan is taken as noted, so we move on to item 5, which is the Director's Highlights Report. Judith, I think this is the first time you've given the report, isn't it? So this is a very exciting moment. So Judith Barker, Executive Director for Place and Connectivity, will introduce the report. Judith.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for your welcome. It's a pleasure to bring the Director's Report. And in the style with which they've been previously delivered, I'm going to cover some of the key issues that don't come up in other papers. And for brevity, as I'm sure all members have read the papers, I'm just going to draw out 1 or 2 points from the paper and indeed provide members with an update. So you'll be aware from the report that the authority, and particularly the Acting Assistant Director for Transport, Tim Bellamy, who's sat beside me, has been particularly active in recent weeks in advocating for a number of really key issues which are central to the local transport and connectivity plan, and particularly advocating for those schemes with a view to securing future money and the prominence of those in government plans. You'll also see that we're working with Active Travel England to ensure that one of their events is hosted in this area in July, and indeed are bringing forward proposals for the Transport Summit, which was so successful last year. There is a clarity and an update to the paper there, where that event is likely to be on the 7th of June rather than the 14th, and amended diary invites will be going out about that. So you'll also see a number of scheme updates, including the green technology, which in Peterborough, but drawing on to a number of key issues. One of the questions related to the importance of monitoring and robust data, and particularly bringing that forward to this committee. That's something that I know the chair and also myself are very personally committed to being able to do. And to ensure that we're monitoring both the impact of connectivity in this area, but also the particular contribution that CPCA is doing. And there is ongoing work to make sure that we can monitor that delivery of the LTCP through this meeting. On the A10, you will see that I have noted that we'll bring a verbal update, and I am able to do that today. So as you can see, CPCA have been working with the county to revisit the governance for the A10 project, noting that CPCA are the sponsor and the funder, as it is the CPCA that has received the funds from the Department of Transport to prepare an outline business case. And then we contracted with Cambridgeshire County Council to undertake the work for the outline business case. So we have, in line with that, what we're going to do is CPCA are going to set up an officer level project board and then bring a report on that project through this meeting to TIC. So the next stage will be to review from where we are now, where the county have produced, working with colleagues here at CPCA, produced an outline business case in draft that has been validated against the updates that have been provided to DFT guidance on key metrics around sustainability and so on. So that business case has been updated. What we then need to do is bring that latest outline business case to TIC and agree the engagement and consultation plans and timeline for that project. So that will be coming to tick at the next opportunity. Obviously, we are mindful that there is no current indication yet on the sum of money that is available from government for this scheme. It remains the case that it was listed in the Network Rail announcements in autumn 2023, but we don't have a sum of money yet. And we're also aware that we do need to test the scoping of the project, which currently doesn't include the Milton interchange, but is clearly a key interface for this project onto the National Road Network and indeed into Cambridge City as well. So that hopefully provides members with an update on that. There are a number of updates on rail schemes as well. Wisbech, the Peterborough Station Quarter, which I'm very pleased to say the government approved the outline business case to move to a full business case for submission in the autumn. And we're also working across border with the rail partnership on the Ipswich to Cambridge line and advocating very firmly on the Ely capacity enhancement. East West Rail remains clearly a absolutely game-changing initiative across the whole of the Oxford to Cambridge area, and we are continuing to work with the East West Rail Company to ensure the maximum level of engagement with partners, and particularly the co-design of the next stages of that work. And we do understand that they're currently intending to go out to consultation in May. I'll just draw out that we have updates on the A47 update report, as well as an update on the cargo bike bids, which unfortunately wasn't successful. And given the questions, we have got updates on passenger numbers, and we'll certainly be looking to improve the quality and detail in those monitoring, as I said earlier, to ensure that open accountability for the progress on the local transport and connectivity plan. And at that point, Chair, I'll hand back to you.
Thank you. And on behalf of the committee, I would like to say how welcome it is to see those stats in here. I think that's really useful, and I'm sure that we will want to continue to see those as we move forward. Thank you to all the officers who have worked so hard to get those ready for us. Do we have any questions or comments? Okay, so we've got Councillor Shaler, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Wakeford. I'll take those three for now. Just to say, if you're down in this corner, I can't see your hands unless you put them right up, because this is in the way. So if I'm looking like I'm ignoring you, you might just need to be a bit more visible. Right, Councillor Shaler, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I read in the report there's a brief mention of the House of Commons Transport East event. I was privileged to be at that event, and it was very interesting to hear the testimony from many across the region that really point to the same problems that we have in the combined authority area, and that is no joined up transport thinking overall, problems with getting buses to train stations. We have the privatized bus model that seems to feel that they are competing with trains. And this is a problem across the entire region. We have obviously problems with Soham Station, with Whittlesea, with various stations that do not have any bus connectivity. So this is something that alone would suggest that we should take more control of the buses by itself. So, and I know this is something that's coming a bit later. One of the other sections that was mentioned was the Ely area capacity enhancement. Now this has been, well, with some fanfare announced over several years, and I don't see any timetable for it yet or money forthcoming. And so I would, it's one of these no-brainers. It has to happen. The benefits to the region are massive, and yet we haven't seen the colour of the money. So I very much applaud the combined authority pushing on that, and I would love to see any update whatsoever. On Wisbech Rail, there's a mention of a briefing for the Fenland District Council in May. May could be a time of elections, so I think it would have to be careful just when that is, but I'm very interested to hear any update at all on Wisbech Rail. Wisbech always feels like a part of the county that is cut off and neglected as far as transport links are concerned. And I know we are also working on bus links that come all the way down to Maney Station, and that is to be applauded, of course. The other thing that I just wanted to briefly mention was the Green Research Centre in Peterborough, and this seems to be going ahead and fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are you happy for me to keep going with the other two questions? Because I know there was a lot in that one. Okay, Councillor Sharp, I think you were next.
Is it working? Yeah. Second time lucky. I've got three. I'll make one comment first. I attended the Long Road session with Nick Johnson last week, and I found it very useful, and it was certainly very refreshing to get the engagement from youngsters and parents. So I'll add that. I've got two questions really. One is I welcome the update on the A10, because obviously that's wearing an East Cambridgeshire hat. That's quite an important thoroughfare for people commuting down from Ely into Cambridge. So, and obviously I'm aware from wearing a county council hat that work's ongoing with that. The main point I really wanted to mention was it's around page 15 is the Ipswich to Cambridge Community Rail Partnership. Very keen to get obviously as much improvement on that as we can. Dullingham is within my district and county divisions, and obviously Newmarket is only 3 miles away. So it is the more we can improve that thoroughfare into Cambridge, the less strain it's going to put on road traffic and bus traffic. So I've got a meeting with, I work quite closely with the Jockey Club, and I've got a meeting with them in a couple of weeks about rail, because obviously they run the race courses at Newmarket, which again attracts lots of people in a short space of time, and they've got to bring them in and get them out. And the more we can get using the rail rather than the roads, it's so much beneficial. But yeah, so very interested to get as much information on that second point as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. And just because I'm aware a lot of people are following this on the chunked up version of this agenda, that reference to the page number was also at 3.4 on this paper. Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you, Chair. You may be able to detect a theme, Judith, on rail as well, though more briefly on this occasion. I think there's a pleasing list of rail projects in 3.4, lots of things that the Combined Authority is working on. It's a shame Peter Wakefield from Rail Future, who asked the earlier question, wasn't here. I'm sure he'd be smiling too, like me. However, now that we've got a bit of resource in the budget for looking at it, I wonder if going forward in these reports we might seek to include a periodic reference to the work looking at the Alconbury station proposal, which we in Huntingdonshire are really keen to see movement on. I'm not expecting you to be able to comment off the cuff on that this morning, which yeah, it's been that sort of a week. But certainly going forward, even brief reference at its earlier stage to much of what's in here would be most welcome.
Thank you. I know this is a packed agenda, but my goodness, we've been here a long time already. We'll take those three. I can see Councillor Elsie would like to make a point. Is there anyone else who wants to start bidding in for the next round of questions at this point? Okay, we'll start with those. Who's picking these up?
So, just in relation to the EDA capacity, in the meeting in Alfred Commons, there was a number of MPs there, and Network Rail made the point to the MPs that actually they still haven't seen the amount of the money related to that, and also the time frames around it. So actually, Network Rail was saying they cannot start their work until they've actually got the confirmation from the Department for Transport and Ministers. So that would be pressed on. The other thing on the at the conference I went to and presented on the ELIA capacity, it wasn't just around the traditional people that you expect to be supportive. You also had the road hauliers were actually supportive of the actual of Ely air capacity as well, and they were going to write to ministers as well. So hopefully there'll be that lobbying and championing will help on that process. On Wisbech Rail, the timing in May, it's about pitching that to make sure that we've informed, we got information from the report, but also allow for informed discussion to then come to flavour the discussion here at TIC in June. So actually that timing, we are working with Benedict Council officers and members to get that in a timely manner. On the Ipswich to Cambridge Community Rail Partnership, so we've made a financial contribution for next year to the partnership, and we will be part of the project board going forward, which will be chaired by Greater Anglia, but we will be a technical perspective. The combined authority will be on that, and then on Alconbury Station, it's part of a package. You'll see in one of the papers later on that it is one of the work streams to look at Alconbury Station. But actually, it's not just a station; it's also about how we make Alconbury real work as a development site, etc. as well. But part of the work we're looking to progress next year will be looking at Alconbury Station.
Thank you. And I suspect that we would like to really place on record as a whole committee our plea for some real commitments to be made on the funding for some of these strategic projects. You know, there have been comments in the press about money being set aside for something like Ely, but we've not seen that commitment of this is the amount of money it's going to cost and this is what you are getting, so that people can actually start the work. And clearly, this is something that benefits our whole region and indeed arguably the whole UK. So we need to get things like this right. So yes, let's make sure we get this on record that as a committee we are very keen to see some of this funding that's been promised actually materialising with some figures attached. Councillor Elsie.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So obviously, I'm pleased that the Green Technology Centre is going on apace in Peterborough, and obviously that the station quarters moved to the next phase, which is fantastic news. Two requests really. One is, whilst we're looking at reviewing rail services, I mentioned in a meeting a couple of months ago that the connectivity between Northamptonshire and Peterborough is rubbish, and given places like Corby and Kettering that are now huge employment centres, it's really important that people have the ability to be able to commute between those towns and Peterborough as kind of the flagship city, especially given our geographic location as the kind of the gateway to the east, the south, the north and the west. So my request is that we don't lose sight of that and that we continue to push to explore what the art of the possible is for connections from Northamptonshire into Peterborough, is the first thing. And the second thing is, obviously, I'm acutely aware of how important the A10 is, but equally the flyover at Wittering is equally important on the A1 for Peterborough. It's a major accident black spot for the combined authority area. I'm aware that Peterborough City Council are having meetings over the next few weeks with Highways England to try and further this, but I asked and I was assured that the CPCA would be supportive of this, and I'm not convinced that there's a join up at this moment in time between the two organisations. So can I please plea that with the heavy hand that the CPCA has over transport projects in the area, that they lend their support to Peterborough City Council to get this flyover put in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions at this point? Councillor Shaler? Nice and brief, because you've already had a big chunk of question here.
Thank you very much, Chair, for letting me come back. I just wanted to add my comments about the e-cargo bike. We had a scheme on the county as well. It was very, very well received. So if we could do anything at all to, it was very disappointed that we missed out on that one. The other one, I just want to very briefly draw attention to is in 3.5, the A47, the scheme. Often these large dualling schemes are seen as a way of reducing congestion and reducing CO2, but there was a very good study that showed that it actually increases the amount of CO2. Vehicles moving at higher speed produce more CO2. That's even before we bring more traffic into the area due to the fact that we've got, a way. Now, there may be good economic reasons for dualling. There may be, other social reasons for dualling. But I think the argument using CO2 has well and truly been squashed at this point. Thank you.
Tim.
So on the connectivity between Northampton and Peterborough, so the subnational sample body, so England, Economic Heartland, have done a study that looks at the connectivity between Peterborough, Northampton, Corby, but also into Oxford. And the outputs from that are informing an investment brochure that's been progressed by England, Economic Heartland with our input, making sure that we've got all the things that we want in that brochure. And those brochures will be used to lobby champion government around funding opportunity for that corridor. So we recognise the connectivity isn't great, but we're working with partners about how we look at that. On the A1 corridor, so we would like to be part of those discussions with National Highways. Part of the improvement corridor, again linking with England and Heartland, is looking at the north-south connectivity on the A1, so looking at the length within the combined authority. So that will be safety issues at Wittering, but also the Buxton roundabout and also further down. So that whole corridor needs to be looked at, and that's with regard to the road safety element, but also some of the movement as well. So we are championing the improvement on that with England and Heartland, but if there's any of those meetings and you want us to be involved in those at a technical level, I'm more than happy to field someone in those discussions. And then on the A47, with the study and with regard to the Alliance, I think that we have a commitment in the LTCP to look at improvements to the corridor, and we need to be convinced by the argument around what is the best for that corridor with regard to the movement. And that needs to be a balance between the economy, the social improvement, but also the environment commitment as well. So we need to understand what is best along that corridor, and ultimately what the exam question we're trying to answer.
Thank you. And Tim and I have both visited Wittering. We've seen that junction. It's shocking. And if there's anything that I can do as a politician, as lead member, to come in and lend my political weight to what's happening, I'm also very happy to do so, because I think we all want to ensure that that is a safer junction. It's just very, very concerning at the moment.
Thank you, Anna. That's really helpful. Tim, could I just ask that you speak with Lewis, because I'm not sure when these meetings are happening, but I've got a briefing note from him to say that they're happening over the next couple of weeks. So forewarned is forearmed. If you can get in there, then that would be really helpful.
Okay, any other questions on that item? Thank you. We've had, I think, a very useful and helpful discussion on this. It has ranged into some of the issues that will come up in items later on the agenda, so I would ask members to take points they've made already as noted and not to repeat them again on the agenda items as we come up, because we are at 10 to 11 already, and we don't want to get to a point where we don't have time to properly discuss some of the items later in the agenda. I would also, from that point of view, ask officers to ensure that, as you did brilliantly last time, key highlights that we really need to know about each of the reports as you present them, and assume, please, that we have read the reports, because we should have read the reports, we will have read the reports, so you don't need to read us through those. With that in mind, we are on to item 6, which is the e-scooter trial update, and I think Anna Graham, Transport Programme Manager, will introduce that next item. Is Anna here? Yeah. Oh, there you are, you already moved. Brilliant, thank you, Anna. Over to you.
Thank you. Good morning. The paper seeks approval for the extension of the e-scooter trial for a further 2 years, and approval in principle for a proposed boundary change to the trial area is to enable us to submit that to the Department for Transport for consideration and approval. The Department for Transport are asking for trial areas to extend to the 31st of May 2026. This enables DFT to build on current learning across areas including usage, safety and environmental impacts, and to explore changing travel patterns since the coronavirus pandemic, as e-scooters become more embedded in public life. Since the start of the trial, a total of 3 million trips have been taken using a Voi e-scooter or e-bike, replacing 980,000 car trips and reducing CO2 emissions by 469 tonnes. The trial continues to demonstrate that e-scooters are providing an alternative for travel that continues to grow. The DFT later provided a further update to trial areas, offering the opportunity to request changes to the geography and/or fleet size for the e-scooter trial, with a focus of new strategic objectives. The paper outlines the areas being considered for extension, which focuses on capturing commuting movements and including new housing developments. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Any questions or comments on this item, please? Councillor Sharp, and do we have anyone else? Councillor Shaler. We'll start with you both. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. Don't want to be the dampener on this, but I presume a question through Anna. Presumably, this trial is for the for Voi carrying on as the offer of the supplier of those excuse me, e-scooters to members of the public. My issue really is obviously around, we've got so many unlicensed where people have bought them and technically they're illegal around on the roads, and it's the safety issue, and also, and I imagine you can't answer the question, what are DFT doing in terms of obviously trying to regulate the use of them going forward? I'm more worried about the safety issue. I'm not against these scooters, I think they're great. It's just how we, I don't think DFT really have come up with an answer or anything in terms of how we're going to regulate the safety issue going forward. That's why. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Shaler.
Thank you very much, Chair. I was going to mention much the same thing about the illegal ones. I have a question. The area being enlarged is about the possibility of putting scooters in this area, not necessarily putting them in immediately, but for future expansion. When will be the next chance to expand further, for instance, to other market towns and things? And the other question I have is regarding infrastructure. I suspect at some point we're going to need separate areas for cars, e-scooters, walking and cycling and things, you know. So it would be good to get ahead of it and think about where we want to be in 10 years' time or whatever. So it'd be interesting to see any thinking on infrastructure changes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Anna, I know you'll want to talk about the safety issues with the Voi trial. I think it is worth reminding ourselves that this is a trial of the licensed hire scooters, and the combined authority does not have authority over the private scooters. So this is very much around the private trial, and I know that, the licensed trial, and I know that committee members absolutely have a concern about the unlicensed vehicles. That isn't something that is within our remit, apart from to say that we understand that there is a concern and we all share that concern. But Anna, over to you, please.
Thank you. DFT intend to introduce legislation around not only the hiring of e-scooters, but just e-scooters in general. That is not sort of going on the programme for this parliamentary sort of period, but they are looking at regulations for the private e-scooter and actually taking the learning from the trial around the type of vehicle, like, so for example, like the size of the wheels, the capping of the speed limits, those sorts of things, and seeing that those are potentially then introduced as regulation for sort of all e-scooters. The timescales for that I'm not sort of abreast upon. However, we do, as the trial area, we do sort of check in with the police, and I'm aware that the police have run operation in October and November, as like an education of private e-scooters and those that use private e-scooters about where and when they can be used.
Thank you. Have you, Councillor Shayla's point as well?
Sorry, yes. So further expansion, this is an opportunity that DFT have provided us right now to proportionately expand. So that's what we've tried to look at. But we are looking at a micro-mobility strategy as part of the Combined Authority to look at developing how we perhaps then expand potentially in the future, and perhaps look at things around sort of actually how do we want e-scooter parking to kind of coexist with sort of bicycle parking and all those sorts of things as well. So there is micromobility strategy that's waiting in the wings, and I believe actually in one of the papers today we're looking at drawing down funding for those strategies. Okay.
Thank you. Are there any more questions on this, Councillor Wakeford? Councillor MacDonald?
Thank you, Councillor Shayla picked up just of my question around interest in options for other trials. Just to mention, certainly in Huntingdonshire, we're looking forward to being able to have a conversation around a couple of locations that might have a particular interest for that as well when we get to it. But certainly, I'm happy to support the extension in the paper for now, and clearly the logic of expanding in the areas where it currently is for the time being as part of this pilot makes the most sense.
Councillor MacDonald? And then
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor
Just briefly, so in terms of the preparation for this, that it does mention in the report, so 20 of us as members from South Cambs, believe, gave feedback or views and were broadly supportive of the extension, and some of that's reflected in the maps. Of course, having a fairly closely monitored and effective service will hopefully avoid too many of the unauthorised uses. And I have some sympathy for the police who've got enough things to do than worry about personal e-scooters. So it is mentioned by the police in the report on potential issues on major A roads. I've seen relatively little of that. Most of it is around the villages and B roads and in the city. So long as that continues, I think that's a good thing. Thank you.
Councillor Seaton?
Thank you, Chair. It's a comment really, and it's about the outcomes and the reduced congestion on major roads and the measurable improvements in connectivity for left behind areas. And I'm just thinking, should the incinerator unfortunately be built, there is going to be a terrific increase in the amount of heavy haulage traffic on an area which is already left behind. So I just wanted to make that comment that that is something that really we need to be aware of. Thank you, Chair.
Anyone else at this stage? Very brief. All right, very brief.
Yeah, my question relates to the list of places where people wanted to bring the scooters, and one of them was the guided busway. And currently this is for active transport, and I understand that the Voi scooters are meant to stay on the carriageway. So this would be kind of a change in policy, but I know they go places where cars can't, but then their speed is reduced, and so there are particular regulations. I wonder if there's any comments people could make on that, whether it's possible to get them onto the guided busway or not. And that means that, you know, the path alongside the guided busway.
Thank you. And something else that I wanted to mention as Cambridge City rep is I think it's incumbent on all of us as Transport and Infrastructure Committee members to take on some responsibility for ensuring that we're going back to our member councils, and we don't have parishes, but there would be obviously that same thing with parish councils in the areas that do. So what I will be doing is making sure that I talk to local councillors to ensure that we've got really good up-to-date information that they're picking up about where the go-slow zones or the no-ride zones could be happening as well, because I think that facility is there, and it's really important people know it's there, and it's really important that we are gathering all the information we can, and obviously local councillors are often the people that get that. Anna.
Just regarding the use of the busway, part of the busway is already used for e-scooters. So there is a traffic regulation order that enables e-scooters to use cycleways and busways. So that's how we're able to use them. So it's not necessarily a change, it's just perhaps extending potentially further up the busway from its current boundary. Thank you.
Thank you. Has everyone had their questions covered off there? Right. Okay. Are there any more questions or comments on this item? If not, I'd like us to progress on to the next one and thank Anna for all the work that's happened here. For you and your team have done a lot on this. So we have votes on this. So we have, I believe, 2 recommendations, which are a simple majority of voting members. We have a recommendation to the board to approve the extension of the e-scooter trial to 31st of May 2026. And we are seeking approval in principle to submit to the Department for Transport a proposed boundary change to the existing trial area. I will propose that. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor MacDonald. We will now move to the vote. All those in favour? I think that's unanimous. Thank you. So would the governance officer report the outcome of that vote, Deputy? So that's a unanimous vote, thank you. Right, we now go on to item 7, LTCP and associated strategies. We've got a lot to cover in the next hour and some people have got hard stops, so I don't want to in any way curtail debate, but can we all be mindful of that, please? Emma.
The paper sets out an update on the local transport and connectivity plan and associated strategies and work streams that are to follow over the next 3 financial years. The proposed strategies and work streams are detailed in Table 2 of the report, and all the work aligned with the LTCP objectives. Table 3 in the report also shows the proposed programme over the next 3 years. All stakeholders will proactively be engaged in all of the strategy development. All of this work is intrinsically linked and will be worked on in parallel, making sure the most is gained while maintaining the strong links with the LTP's vision, aims and objectives. Also, please note, in terms of the electric vehicle infrastructure strategy, it was planned to bring the final draft back to this committee for approval. Following engagement on the document, it has been decided to update it further following more detailed work by the highways authorities on the business case for the Levi Fund. The updated strategy will be shared in advance and brought back to the June committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. And I didn't introduce you at the beginning, so Emma White is Acting Transport and Policy Manager. Thank you, Emma, for your work on this. Are there any questions or comments on this report? Yes, yes. Anyone else at this? Okay, we have both our members of the business board would like to ask some questions, and then we have Councillor MacDonald, and I think that's probably enough for the first stage. So Andy, over to you first.
I just hope I'm not going to ask Rebecca's question before she does. But one is, it's great that you've got them prioritised. There's nothing like prioritisation when you've got a big programme to deliver. I don't see anything on digital connectivity within the programme, and we always think about connectivity. Is that your question? We always think about connectivity as more than just transport. So I need to comment on digital connectivity. And then as part of the second one, showing my naivety a bit, is will these sub-strategies come back to this committee for review, or are they just going to kind of like go off into the distance on their own now?
Rebecca, you still have the floor. Is there anything you want to add?
Andy has completely stolen my thunder. Yes, I was going to talk about digital connectivity and just a bit of a plea, really, that the people tend to think about connectivity in terms of transport, and actual digital connectivity is one of the biggest improvements that we can make to get cars and traffic off the roads. And it should run through all of these strategies like a bit of a golden thread, because there is something that could be done on all of them, something that digital connectivity can improve, even if that's through the communications or the app that was referenced. So absolutely, I agree with what Andy said.
Thank you. And from my point of view, I think you're absolutely right to emphasise that we talk a lot about what can be done on roads to sort out some of the issues we face, but that digital connectivity becomes a real, so important in helping us deal with that. So thank you. And I didn't note down who, it was Councillor McDonald, wasn't it?
Briefly, 3 points. One was that I'd like to understand, not here and now, but going forward on the mobility travel hubs. I know there's planned to be a trial in Ramsey, I think it is, in the Ramsey area. So it's just understanding a little bit more. Alan and I and Neil, who are members of the Highways Committee, had quite some discussion on soil-affected roads, because this is a big issue in the east. Of course, it's not an issue for our part of the world. It's really good to see this in here, because, you know, if residents at all feel unsafe or that accessibility is hindered, that's a major issue. So I think that's really good to see in here. And the last thing is just LTCP, the connectivity, going back to Neil's comment before, the bus and the rail connectivity, I think is essential. Thank you.
Thank you. And Rebecca, I missed that you wanted to come back in, so over to you again.
It was just to point out that our digital strategy will need to be refreshed in the course of this timescale, so maybe it's worth adding in, as it only runs to 2025.
Thank you. So I think, Judith, you're going to pick up a couple of these and then we'll pass on to Emma. That way round? Yep.
Thank you for raising the point about digital connectivity. And obviously one of the things I'm doing as coming in as the new director is just looking at all of the key areas within the local transport and connectivity plan and thinking about how we draw out some of those particular issues, as you say, the cross-cutting themes. So firstly, we've already arranged with Connecting Cambridgeshire to make sure that we have a presentation. I believe we're looking at the September tick on the digital connectivity strategy that they have, presenting here, and then talking about the review process for that, because that is a 21 to 25 window on that document, and that will allow a review and also a look forward. But I think you make a really good point about the importance of it being a cross-cutting area of all the work that the whole transport team, both within buses, public transport, and the wider piece consider. So thank you for raising that. I was also just going to confirm that in terms of the sub-strategies, absolutely they will come to tick as they're prepared and worked through. So there will be opportunity to comment. And at that point, I'll hand over to Emma.
Hi, and to add to that, for them to be approved as a child document for the LTCP, they need to go through the committee process. So, yeah, all the documents will come back. In terms of your comments about each of the strategies, following this approval, we can sort of get going and move everything forward, start scoping out all the work. We've got members of the team allocated for each of the projects, and engagement with all stakeholders in the scoping process and going forwards on the mobility hubs, the soil affected roads and the bus and rail will happen. Does that pick up all the questions?
Thank you. Now, I've got Councillor Elsie. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak at this point? So we have Councillor Elsie, Councillor Sharp, anyone else? Councillor Elsie.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, when we're looking at the active travel and strategy implementation plan, I know that the team at Peterborough are keen to be leading on the plan for Peterborough. I have now signed off the LC whip for Peterborough, so that is going through the democratic process as we speak. But the thing that concerns me with the LC, I've also set up a cabinet members working group, which is cross-party, to look at active travel and sustainable travel in its entirety, because the thing that concerns me is that we look at what's here now and we look at the architecture of a city as it is now and look to try and bend active travel around it, rather than saying what is the art of the possible. And you know, when you look at a city like Peterborough, which isn't that dissimilar to Cambridge in a lot of respects, in that there's a bloody great river going through the middle of it and so on and so forth. You know, if we're looking at sustainable active travel, we should be looking at riverboat taxis. We should, you know, we've got 4 disused railway lines that run into the centre of Peterborough from the surrounding areas. that already have the pathways in, and it's not beyond the wit of man for them to change the gauge on that so that it could become light railway or tram. I don't want to be continually sticking a plaster over a gaping wound. What I want to do is, if we're looking at active travel and we're looking at ways to improve travel across the board, then we need to look at it with a blank piece of paper and not say, oh, well, because there's a building there, we can't do that. Well, if that building is the reason that a holistic strategy can't be implemented, remove the building, you know. So it's about, I'm really pleased with what we're doing, but I just want a greater emphasis on looking at it holistically and not just focusing on walkers and cyclists, because they're not the only two groups, and it's not the only two sustainable ways that we can move people about our cities. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Councillor Sharp, you wanted to raise something?
Yeah, I'll be very brief, Chair. Just 2 points. One, touching on Councillor McDonald's point about the soil-affected roads. Yeah, obviously covers East Cambridgeshire as well as Fenland and Huntingdonshire, and look forward to the update on that. The other point is really, again, around Vision Zero and road harm. Certainly within my division, we've got lots of long straight roads where people drive too fast, and it's hell. So again, would welcome a report on how we're looking at allocating that £1 million, or how it's going to be spent, because I think it's a very big issue personally for road safety around the county. Thank you.
Councillor Shaler?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll be brief. I've already mentioned quite a lot on connectivity, but this holistic across modes, hubs, that sort of thing, we need to keep going. And I was quite interested to see the mention of trackless trams and driverless pods, and I'd love to see this kind of trial across the area. Thank you very much.
I think Tim would like to talk about driverless pods.
There's a few things those questions. So on the Peterborough element, I think we've got a number of the strategies that are outlined in here will actually help with that. So you've got the Peterborough City Centre, which is technically the new vision for Peterborough transport elements. I think that's a key part, and working with your officers to progress that, I think, key. But also the other part on that is around the research and development piece, is actually thinking outside the box. So linking back to what Councillor Taylor just said, those innovative things such as autonomous pods, driverless tram, those sort of things, actually take it, rather than doing what is now, what can we vision for 10, 15 years time, but actually start to look at that. So I think some of the work we've got in train will actually help to progress both through the Peterborough bit and also from what Councillor Shaler was saying. And then also in the LTCP, there is the toolbox of measures, so it's not just about, it's a framework, so saying that what we implement in Peterborough will be obviously different to what we necessarily do in Huntingdonshire, etc. So it's understanding that the LTCP provides a framework with which we then cherry pick what's best for each of our locations. And then very quickly, just on the mobility hubs, and was around, so we've done some work with Huntingdon District Council on actually looking at one for Ramsey, but actually mobility hubs will be different for different locations. So actually the free trial will need to learn from what we're doing in Ramsey, but actually what we may implement in Ramsey might not necessarily will work in whether we're doing South Cambs or in East Cambs or wherever that is. So therefore we need to understand what's the exam question we're trying to solve by actually implementing some of these measures.
Thank you. Emma, is there anything you want to add for any of those? Does everyone feel they've had their questions covered off? Great. I'm going to keep us moving forward. Thank you very much. And thank you for that really detailed and useful report. And it's fantastic to see the practical work on the LTCP moving forward as well. So we have some votes on this. It's all right, I haven't forgotten. We have 3 recommendations. I'll take them on block if that's okay. Recommendation A, which is to note there is clearly no vote required. Recommendations B and C, which are about approving the reprofiling of the funding and delegating authority of spend and grant funding arrangements. They require a vote by consensus, otherwise a vote in favour by at least 2/3 of the member present, including Cambridgeshire County Council and Peterborough members. So I will propose recommendations B and C if we're happy to take them together. Are there any objections to that? Who would like to second? Okay, Councillor Elsey, I think you got in there first. So I will propose, Councillor Elsey will second. Can I see those in favour, please, of recommendations B and C? Thank you, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. We are now moving on to item 8. Item 8 is the Transforming Cities Fund, and we are joined online by Matthew Lutz, who is Transport Programme Manager and will present the report. Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. Hope you can all hear me, and apologies that I can't be there in person. The purpose of this paper is to provide an update in relation to the Transforming Cities Fund, also known as the CCF, and agree the additional works that will be undertaken to utilise project underspends. The paper is to note the positive delivery of work to date and approval of the way forward on additional works that fit within existing projects and scope by utilising Department for Transport and the Combined Authority. CCF funding was allocated in this region to improve the quality of life for those within the whole of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and the fund is not restricted to the cities but must be spent within the boundaries of the Combined Authority. An appendix to the paper outlines a high level of confidence that central government has in the Combined Authority's ability to deliver the entirety of the TCF programme in a timely and effective manner. Within the letter, DFT, Department for Transport, state that funding will and we will continue to work with you in the coming months as schemes pass through the process in order to confirm future payments. This thereby allows for the programme to be delivered in full. The Department for Transport have recognised that due to legitimate reasons, some TCF projects have programme extensions in place, and through the quarterly meetings and other discussions, DFT has agreed that these fit within their timescales and that we can continue to deliver these works using CCF monies. It is worth noting that DFT has a right to claw back any monies where the Combined Authority has not spent the funds allocated. And with this in mind, the Combined Authority has continually had an open and honest, transparent dialogue with DFT around budgets and spend. As it became clear that there would be an underspend in some projects, we looked at potential additional works that we could use TCF monies for within the project scope. As agreed with the Department of Transport, we have kept additional works within these existing projects and within the scope and aligned to CCF objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. That's really helpful. Are there any questions or comments on this item? Councillor Shaler? Anyone else? Councillor Sharp? I'll take you both to start with. Let me know if you also want to say anything. Councillor Shaler.
Thank you very much, Chair. Firstly, it's great to see the flexibility and the timescale and use of this money. That's very, very helpful. I've got a point that's probably a bit pedantic, but on page 45 in 3.2, the aims, I think bullet point number 1 and 4 are exactly the same. Unless that might be just a typo.
That does look correct. Yes, we're all nodding up here. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. I think he's just reinforcing the point, Neil. Yes, my question is around, and this is something, and Councillor Shader and McDonald will be aware of this, it comes up quite regularly at County Council Transport Committee, is the Wisbech access strategy. Certainly one of my colleagues in the Fens, and I think, and again, county colleagues might be able to stop me if I'm wrong, but I think from a county council point of view, they've taken that as far as they can, and it's really looking for the funding for the next stage. So really, I'm looking. I know it's not included in the shortlist that is being suggested. I just wonder what the short or long term outcomes on that is. Or can we expect? Thank you.
Okay, who's picking those up? Tim, do you want to start?
So just on both of those points, the first point with regards Councillor Shaler around the flexibility of the funding, just to reinforce this committee there was a very real possibility at one point in the last 18 to 24 months ago that actually the TCF programme was needed to be reset, and actually that's what we did as a committee. And then through the liaison with DFT, we've built the confidence to actually say this is where the programme is. And actually some of those slippages they've allowed us to, because they know the confidence that we can deliver. That is not to say that every authority who's got CCF money has kept their CCF money. So we are in a positive position that actually we have maintained our £95 million. So I think it is a really positive thing that we've got that flexibility. And then in relation to the Whitby's access strategy, so part of the strategy, part of that strategy was funded by the TCF. So this is it has been funded, so and taking it as far as it got to. What we need to do now is to understand what funding opportunities there may be to take things forward. So that's working both with the county council, but also external funding partners, and that needs to see how we can then accelerate or even implement some further parts of the Whitby access strategy.
Thanks. So just to confirm, that has been funded, but it's gone as far as it can now within the TCF framework. So now we need to look at what the next stage is. Have I got that right? Thank you. Are there any other questions? Or Matthew, is there anything you wanted to add on that?
No, nothing from me, other than we do have to keep, obviously, any underspend. And so it's really important that we keep that in mind as we view potential spending.
Thank you. We're slightly losing a few of your words, but I think we got the key point about that, about keeping watching on understand and ensuring that everything still becomes, all the money's in play. And I'm sure that we're all equally grateful for the diligence of officers in ensuring that we do keep all of this funding in play. Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. I think the appendix is particularly helpful in terms of the setting out the spend, the re-spend of the underspend, which, as Tim mentioned, it's clearly enormously welcome that we've been able to retain and been able to demonstrate value in allowing national government to let us retain them, unlike some peers elsewhere. The section 1 outlining St Ives Local Improvement Fund spend is of value and interest to us locally in Hunts. I'm conscious there's some RAG ratings that aren't unpacked, most of which are green, but some are amber. So offline we might follow up just to make sure we've understood what the amber is a reference to. Thank you.
Thank you. And whilst we are on the subject of funding, I thought it might just be worth celebrating the broader successes of our team, because I think it's £167 million of transport funding that has been secured by the CPCA over the last 2 years. And that's a really impressive achievement, and so many people in this room and also virtually have contributed to that. So thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on that? Is that a hand? You're leaning forward there. Neil, is that?
Sorry, Chair, I don't know if I have time. I don't want to. But I was just going to mention the A141 work. And it's given that there is that extra money, the underspend that can be put back into the study, that's fantastic. The original study was very, very road-centred. And I think the way it's going now is a much more multimodal support for the region, and I think that's a fantastic advance. Thank you.
Thanks, and we'll hold that and roll that into item 9. I think that would be really helpful. So there's quite a lot of recommendations here. Recommendation A and E are to note, but we have 3 others. Is everybody happy for us to roll those together? Okay, I will propose these. Who do I have as a seconder for this? Councillor Shaler, you got in first this time. So I am proposing and Councillor Shaler is seconding. Can I see those in favour of the recommendations, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So now we move on to item 9. This is the A141 update on progress and engagement. And Matthew, this is also yourself.
I do hope you can hear me. If not, please ask for clarification. This paper provides an update from the Combined Authority and Cambridgeshire Council on the progress to date in relation to the A141 and St Ives Improvement Study. Cambridgeshire County Council is responsible for delivering the scheme up to the production of an outline business case, and the Combined Authority is the project sponsor, and final scheme decisions are made through this committee. This paper provides an update on the progress of the A141 work to date and next steps to follow on in terms of strategic work and stakeholder engagement. As a reminder, the study focuses on the A141 St Ives and considers the upgrading of the transport network on the A141 corridor and around Huntingdon and St Ives. Through this improvement scheme, we aim to support local and long-distance travel and aligns with the local transport and connectivity plan and the Huntingdonshire District Council's local plan. Since the previous project stage was completed, there have been some key policy changes at local, regional and national level, such as a greater focus on decarbonisation and climate change risks. The future option packages need to reflect these changes to demonstrate the shift towards sustainable growth, including in the transport sector. As a result, the outline business case started by revisiting the work done on the strategic business case stage, assessing assumptions and refining the options in the context of sustainable and active travel considerations. The consultants working on the project are planned to present the technical analysis and reporting outcomes from this work to the future internal project board, probably in March or April 2024. An update on this will be brought to the committee for consideration of options and the timeline of next steps. In the meantime, a member working group has been established and the full briefing to HDC members has been set up for later in March, and an invite will be extended to all members of this committee as well. We will return to the Transport and Infrastructure Committee in June, stakeholder leading up to and including consultation, which should take place later in 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. And before I throw that open, I've just had a message through from somebody who is watching on the live stream to say that when we've got someone coming in on the web access, it's a bit buzzy and echoey on the live stream. I don't know if there's anything that we're able to do about that, but I'm just alerting you to that. I have done a check and I can't see anyone with microphones on, so we've not got feedback. Okay, questions and comments on this one, please. I can see Councillor Wakeford getting in there quick. Anyone else at this point? We'll start with you, Councillor Wakeford. Let me know if you have anything you want to ask.
Thank you. Sorry to be predictable, Chair. I'm conscious the one-for-one and related St Ives works have been under discussion, I think, here since certainly before my time on the committee, since about 2018, and we in Huntingdonshire have been keen to see progress on it. And we've also been urging for an update here to TIC specifically for a little while. So I'm certainly grateful for this paper, which I think is helpful. It articulates how important the A141 and St Ives transport corridors are to Huntingdonshire, and especially how it connects up our communities across rural areas. The challenges in paragraph 3.4 will be familiar to many of our residents, and of course the passage of time while those have been ongoing or getting worse is obviously a frustration, but it's certainly welcome that we're pulling the public transport and active travel elements more fully into the project work, as Councillor Shaler touched on in the previous item, at the same time as revisiting it all in light of the updated national policy context, which I think the Chair referenced in answer to a question earlier as well. The references in the report to refreshing governance and communications are helpful. We look forward to learning the conclusions of that in terms of the process being followed. The paper mentions, as Matthew touched on as well in presentation, that final decisions will be made by this committee, which is helpful for stakeholders to be clear about. The final sentence of 3.9 mentions, again, as I think Matthew alluded to, that the technical analysis and reporting outcomes from the ongoing work need to be brought to TIC for consideration of the options with a timeline of next steps. I'd be really keen to know, if not necessarily immediately now, when TIC can realistically expect to be able to see that, both for the decision and for clarity around the expected timescales. I wonder if to support our engagement with that as a committee, it might be helpful to hold a more detailed session for interested TIC members offline outside the regular meeting schedule as well to ensure people are up to speed. Finally, if you'll forgive me, Chair, just as a more technical question as well, I wonder whether the team have found any way of taking into account the planned bus improvements outlined elsewhere later in our agenda into the work on the outline business case. There's a bit of a sort of chicken and egg challenge there, but modelling in the improvements we intend to happen, as well as the status quo at the moment, may give a more useful analysis and baseline for the options going forward. Thank you for indulging me, Chair.
Thank you. A very similar theme coming through there to Councillor Elsie's point in the previous debate around making sure that we're bringing in the future potential as well as the current situation. Who's going to answer those? Is that Matthew?
issues with connectivity, so I'm happy to. Yeah, I'm more than happy to. So with regard to the issues around governance and also decision making and taking that thing forward and the next steps, we're happy to come back to you, Councillor Wakefield, on what that process is, what timeline is, etc., and make sure that we're all making that aligned to work that you may be doing at the local level. So we're happy to have those discussions offline. And then with regard to the bus improvement element, so they will form a key part going forward, but at the moment we need to go through the revalidation of the SOBC to start with, make sure we've covered that off, and then any emerging technical solutions an improvement then can be built into the next stage. So actually we need to make sure we get the SOBC bit right and configured and revalidated, and then the other technical issues can come forward.
Thank you. Does that cover off everything?
It does. Extremely helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other comments on this one? Councillor Shaler, anyone else? Councillor Shaler.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to very briefly mention the working group which I chair from the county, and there was a lot of interest in the first meeting, and we're very open to adding further members to that if there is a need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I suspect you may have a volunteer. Anything else? If not, this item is to note. I want to thank Matthew for being able to come in to present to us, and for all the work that has gone into this. There's a lot of detailed background work happens here, so thank you. So no vote required on this one. We're now moving on to, that's the last, that is the last voting item, but we have some extremely important updates to receive now. So we're on to we have item 10, which is the bus network update, and item 11, which is the bus reform update. I would like, if we can, to take those separately to ensure that we do cover things off. So focusing first on the bus network issues, and then we can do the bus reform piece. I think, who have we got coming up to repeat? Andrew is going to, speaking from here. Okay, so I think, Andrew, you're going to speak on the bus network update first.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for your time this morning. The paper submitted gives an overview of the work that has progressed on a number of delivery-focused projects for the bus network. Since the approval for investments linked to the precept and budget in January's Combined Authority Board, officers have worked at pace over the past 5 weeks to set up support for analysis and development of the projects to have as fast but robust a design phase as possible. Engagement has taken place with constituent councils as part of this process. The paper outlines the various methodologies and components to the work that have been applied, for the £1 bus fare for under 25s in the region, the investment into improved bus services utilising the mayoral precept, and the targeted improvement of bus stops and shelters. It also summarises network changes that are being implemented by Stagecoach. Work is ongoing to bring this together into an integrated delivery programme, with an onus on a clear monitoring and evaluation plan for all of the projects to evaluate success. At the time of publication for this report, work was ongoing into the analysis of the investment into bus services. Attached in the appendix of the Combined Authority Board report for the same topic, which was published yesterday, is a table that I will talk through on screen as it is shared shortly. I appreciate this is a lot of information to interpret live, so I'll talk through the mechanics of the table rather than all of the specifics. As that's just being shared and hopefully will pop up on screen, the table we've produced is a high-level metrics table that demonstrates each service improvement. Just hold off while it comes up, hopefully. Brilliant. So the table is a high-level metrics table that demonstrates each service improvement, the main points served, the type of service, which may influence the route to market, an estimate of the population catchment and trip catchment, and some operational characteristics on journey length and frequency. It should be noted this is still in draft and in the design phase, and further more detailed route outlines will be published in due course. Sitting behind this metrics table are plans on a page, of which there's an example in the paper, and associated route maps which have been drafted and are being refined in order to move through to implementation as quickly as possible. In terms of clear next steps, the projects are working through to delivery, and the intention is to deliver the £1 fare scheme in May-June 2024 and the bus service investments over the summer of 2024. Thank you for your time.
And just to say that this is part, I believe, of what's been put up with the board papers, so you're not being expected to read all this online, grab it, and then that's it. And you, if you go online and look at the board papers, you will see that there. Questions, comments, debate, please. Lots of hands. So I think we went in the order of Councillor MacDonald, and then Councillor Seaton, and then Councillor Elsie, and then we've got Councillor Shayler, and then we've got Councillor Sharp. Right, we'll try three. We'll see what level of your questions are. If they're not so detailed, we might get five. Otherwise, we'll stop, do some answers and come back on the second round. Councillor MacDonald.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I'm happy. I'm making comments and observations. I want to make 4 of them. I'm very happy if the officers want to come back subsequently so that other councillors have time to speak. First of all, number 9, service. So I note the comments in the report and the retendering process that Andrew and the officer team is going through. I've received representation from Councillor Kane in East Cambs and Councillor Bradnam in South Cambridgeshire. This is a very important route. I think Andrew and the officer team know that. So because of the connectivity between Littleport, Ely and Cambridge, so it does make mention to this, so please be mindful in the retendering that we can optimise that as much as possible. Willingham and 6 Mile Bottom. Willingham is mentioned in the work that's being done, and thanks again to the officers for that. 6 Mile Bottom is rather overlooked. I don't know if, well, I don't think it's deliberate, but I don't know if we're sort of looking at other things. We've just slightly overlooked 6 Miles Bottom. It seems to be a sort of Bermuda Triangle of little active travel or public transport there. Thirdly, Cottenham, because of development that's happened in recent years and ongoing development in Cottenham, the 8 service is really important, especially for students for Hills and Long Road. So just my request is, please, that the speed at which Cottenham is growing is matched by the public transport provision. And lastly, a local issue, the 7A service. Thanks again to the officers, the work we've done on this. Hingston is feeling a little bit left out of the route realignment, so if we could look at that. Thanks, Chair. As I say, I'm happy for officers to come back subsequently rather than report now.
Yeah, and I think there will be some things that we're able to answer today and some things we'll need to come back on, but this is a work in progress. So then, actually, I also just want to say that Mayor Nick and I have been doing a lot of work with officers on Route 9. We're very concerned to see those latest cuts, and the second we found out about it, we were asking officers to think about what plans could be put in place. So yes, this I think is something that's really on the mind of a lot of us in the committee. Councillor Seaton.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to make the committee aware that on the 26th of February, a motion was passed by full council in Fenland regarding the lack of bus services and therefore the failure of the CPCA to deliver its commitment in the LTCP. FDC noted that the proposed changes to bus services in Fenland are not commensurate with the needs of the rural communities within our district. Such lack of public transport contributes to social isolation, inability to take full advantage of educational and employment opportunities, and to take care of the health needs of the residents. The local transport and connectivity plan evidently falls short of its own commitment to make transport more accessible to everyone. Given that the district has some of the country's most deprived wards and competent health inequalities, FDC resolves to call upon the Mayor to review the LTCP and propose bus service provision in order to address the needs of residents in Fenland. We would also draw your attention to external evidence highlighting the need for transport improvements in Fenland. In November 2023, Friends of the Earth published their independent research showing how bus services have plummeted outside London over the last decade. When comparing local authority trips, reductions per hour for weekdays between 2003 and 2006 against 2023, Fenland has seen a reduction in service of 83.8%. This is the second worst figure in the country. As stated, we call upon the Mayor to review the LTCP and propose bus service provision in order to address the needs of residents in Fenland. That was the motion that was passed by the full council on the 26th. And one other point I'd like to make, if I may, is that, and I think it was mentioned earlier about trying to put a sticking plaster on what we've got at the moment. I think we need to look at what is required and what is needed rather than just trying to improve the deficiencies that inequalities that we have. And I have been pushing for some time for a discussion between the CPCA and parish councils. And I know that Neil Bars, when he was here, did speak to one parish clerk to try and set something up in December, and still nothing has happened. So I'm not quite sure how new bus services can be implemented when you haven't had the opportunity to discuss the needs with the parishes. And I'm sure it is not just Fendon, it must also apply to other districts within the area. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, because a lot of quite technical and broader questions, I'm going to try and take as many as I can before coming back into you here. So, Councillor Elsie, I think you're next.
Thank you, Chair. You'll be relieved to know mine's really quick. Can we just, with the £1 bus fares for under 25s, you'll be aware that there are potentially at least 2 new services in the Peterborough area. Can we ensure that as part of the tendering process, the potential operators of those services are aware that there's a £1 scheme and that they are looking to implement it? Thank you.
Thank you. So, question there on the £1 fares, Councillor Shaler.
Thank you very much, Chair. I applaud the Cambridge to Huntingdon direct route. Will that run to the train station in Huntingdon? My question on that one. The other ones, there are some fantastic ideas. The better connectivity for Chatteris and Ely, and Chatteris also to Maney Station, and I note that that is to be coordinated with the train times, which is what we need. The one that goes from Wisbeach, Christchurch, also to Maney Station, to be coordinated with the train times. These are absolutely essential. I think there are 2 that worry me a little bit. That is the Peterborough to March bus. Will that compete with trains, perhaps? Another one, March to Whittlesea as well, because obviously there's a train line there. So I'd like to see more of an overall view and connectivity as regards those particular ones. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to keep powering through if I can. So, Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. Probably 3 or 4 points. Yes, touching on Service 9, certainly a few councillors had a meeting with Stagecoach about 3 weeks ago about that service, so it is very one that's very important to that locality. And there is some, without getting too technical details, there is some Section 106 monies around from developments of quite big building up to the north, but that won't kick in until later in the project, because I think it's got to be triggered once 300 houses are built. So I'd be interested, maybe outside the meeting, to understand how that's going to be. One technical point, on the paper on 2.6, we've got 3 items in bold. Does that mean we're actually voting on those today? Could it just say it is recommended to introduce? I don't know, maybe officers can answer that. Then looking at the proposals for future services, certainly I've been heavily involved with the A to B 1102 group, which runs through a fair bit of my division. They've, I know, put forward some new routes, so I'd be interested to see that. And also interested outside the meeting to look at the table that was put up on the screens, which I haven't seen. And also getting some idea of the funding, because we've got a massive shopping list here, and the accountant in me, which sadly I am, sort of says I've got no numbers against those, so what of those can we actually spend? And finally, touching on Councillor McDonald's point about 6 Mile Bottom, that part of that is it's got about 3 different district wards in it, some in South Cambs, some in East Cambs. And there is actually a railway station there. The platform is still there, but and the trains run through, but obviously the station is no longer operational. But yes, it's a strange one. Thank you.
Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. As a representative of a district with significant rural populations as well, I have to say I empathise with an awful lot of where Councillor Seaton and it sounds like Fenland District Council are coming from in terms of the importance of bus services, particularly in connecting up rural areas. I think one of the places I depart from the analysis of the motion he just shared with us is the suggestion of responsibility and blame on the part of the combined authority there. I think we recognise there are broader structural factors, not least linked to national government policy around funding and support for buses and public transport that are at play there, and there's a bigger conversation that we clearly don't have time for. But the sentiment of trying to do what we can with rural buses, I absolutely agree with, and I think that's informed a lot of certainly the contributions that we as a district have brought to discussion in this committee over the past couple of years. I think the routes set out in the appendix are clearly never going to cover all of the asks we might want, but the new and changed services with respect to Huntingdonshire are certainly very welcome for us. We found it very helpful discussing those with CPCA officers in the briefings of the district and city councils referenced in the paper, which is where we've used those as an opportunity to bring up a lot of the local concerns around the routes and have had some very productive conversations arising out of that. So I wanted to thank officers, and clearly it sounds like that hasn't been manifested in quite the same way everywhere. Within the paper, route F is referenced as part of the three listed in 2.6 that Councillor Sharp drew our attention to as well. That's in Huntingdonshire. Clearly, with the data presented to us, it's pretty difficult to justify a subsidy of nearly £100 per passenger journey with an average of just 2 passengers per day on the morning bus service. But certainly this has caused concern locally beyond the scale at which that statistic would suggest, not least, as I understand, there are examples of students using this as a route to get to school. So from the data here, it's clearly difficult to make a decision other than the one that's listed, but I would urge that we reflect offline around other signposting available to ensure that the home to school run in particular isn't being avoidably lost for students in our district. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a lot for you there. I did, as lead member, just want to reinforce one point, which is that the bus reform work we're doing at the moment in terms of the routes that we've looked at, we've never said that this would be all we would do or that this would be everything. And I think it's really important. Over 7 million sounds a lot of money, but it is not going to solve decades of underinvestment in a public transport network. So as chair, I would like to absolutely note the enthusiasm from every single person who has spoken for improving our buses, and I think that is hugely welcome. And speaking with one voice on the importance of better funding for public transport, I think puts us in a really strong position, and I think it's really heartening to hear the support that everybody is having within this committee for better buses for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. I think it's absolutely an aspiration we all share. So, Andrew, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll try and answer as many as I can, and some I'll take away to provide written responses. I think probably the quickest question was Councillor Elsie's, and probably the quickest answer that yes, we will ensure the £1 fare is covered on new services that are contracted out during this year. In terms of a general update on the 9, because I appreciate it is something that's there's a lot of awareness about it at the moment. We have undertaken an accelerated tender exercise to provide a contracted solution to restore as much of the service as possible. Obviously, there's been quite a severe degradation of the service from the journeys that were there previously, down to 3 with the new commercial proposal from Stagecoach. We're proposing to double that and work towards getting bids in to try and achieve that by April 14th. That still doesn't get it to the level it is now. I think what's complicated that process a little bit is that the journeys for Stagecoach's new commercial service have not remained static to what's there at the moment. For example, there's a journey from Littleport at 6 o'clock in the morning and one at 7. The new commercial solution has one at 6:35. So it's very difficult to build around that, to put in a contractor solution that doesn't directly compete. Unfortunately, that's the nature of the deregulated market we have at the moment. We've tried to work at pace to provide the best solution we can, and we'll keep, obviously, councillors informed and the committee as we progress through that pace to provide a solution. Just a couple of the other things to pick up, I think, in terms of some of the specifics. Cambridge to Huntingdon, we are looking at the bus station and rail station in Huntingdon as the main points, as well as potentially the hospital. We just need to do a bit more of a refinement of the timetable to sort of factor all of that in. I think the key thing with that service is we're intending it to be an express service. So it's that balance between the more places it stops, the slower it's going to make the journey time, versus what we want to do with getting it into Cambridge and back to Huntingdon. Really relevant point about the integration in terms of both the timings of rail journeys, but also the competitiveness of bus versus rail. Is something I did a lot in Hertfordshire when we were setting up new services of how we can make the bus service distinct from a rail service and the differences sometimes between them, but a bus service might set up a lot more local journeys than a rail service can do realistically and fill in some of those gaps that aren't available to people, as well as sometimes obviously the cost between those two services and making buses as affordable as possible. I think generally a few points were raised around rural transport in general. I think it is something very much in our mind with both this investment linked to the precept and some of the services proposed, as well as ongoing work that we're doing and making sure that mix is right so that rural residents don't suffer from social isolation and have that access to transport that people in cities do have on a more sustainable footing. And that's something that's really mindful of how we're working through these methodologies and what we're doing to sort of build that as a general concept. And I think finally, there's a couple of things from Councillor Sharp, apart from the Service 9. Funding is a really important point. We've used in that table, you'll see when you get a chance to look at it a bit more, the main peak vehicle requirement will drive cost. So we can approximate that peak vehicle requirement to make sure it fits in within the budget envelope. And a gateway review we have now with the design phase to make sure that our designs fit that budget envelope still from the previous work we've done, and just check and challenge that. If that is the case, we can then move forwards because we know we've got the services that mix with the budget envelope we've got. If it doesn't, for whatever reason, we can go back and review and refine as we do that process. A to B 1102, we've had some good engagement with them the last few weeks, and Jonathan, in terms of some of the proposals they've made, that has been factored into some of our designs, and we're sort of in constant engagement with that group to make sure the designs that come out fit what the local community wants for those routes when we bring them and publish them. I think that is most things I've tried to cover with the responses, and happy to take away the other technical points and come back with written responses.
Thank you. And I think, Judith, you just want to come in as well.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just going to come back to Councillor Seaton and reassure him that we are preparing a response to the decision that was taken at full council on the 26th of February. Obviously, we absolutely share your ambition to address all of the connectivity challenges across the rural area and the impact that that has on people being able to access employment and education opportunities, and really look forward to working with you collaboratively to address some of those issues going forward. Totally recognise the point that you're making about the need for a long-term vision, but also we need to look at what we can do in the short term as well, and that's absolutely at the basis of how we use that precept money as wisely as possible. But we're all obviously bound by the government funding that we have or don't have in this area to take forward that agenda. So we need to look at what we can do as the art of the possible now, but also hold that long-term vision. So we will be providing a formal response, and I look forward to working with you collaboratively on those issues.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. I think your reflection earlier, Chair, was really helpful and reassuring about the fact that, articulated in different ways from different local perspectives, sounds like across the chamber we continue to support the idea of better buses and finding a better way doing this. Judith touched on resource explicitly, of course. Risk of blowing the tone. Obviously, the other question there is ways of willing better buses, but the need to support ways of raising the revenue for that. I think it's one of the reasons we're particularly interested to see progress on the next item, not to blur your items around developing a business case that would then let us revisit some of those questions. Obviously, they're politically charged, but better buses cost something.
This is the last sweep for any comments on this one. So, Councillor Shaler, I saw your hand. Anyone else? Okay.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just to continue with the theme of shorter and longer term solutions, I think pretty much everybody supports a decent rail link between Wisbech and March, but any solution would take time. So in the meantime, an express bus service for this, has obvious advantages. And just to mention that Whittlesea Station doesn't have any bus connectivity at the moment, so that seems to be a bit of a gap in our ambition. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think it is worth noting, picking up on the comment that's been made around the funding window. The East of England is one of the lowest funded in the country for public transport. We operate within the means that we have. We need more funding for public transport in the East of England, and some of that, quite a bit of that, needs to come from central government. And I think it's important to remember that. I suspect we all agree that there is a huge need for greater funding. I think it is important to put that on the table, because what we're asking officers to do is to do what they can with the money that we are able to find them. And I would want to pay huge tribute to the work of the officer team. I am consistently convinced that there's really two Andrews, because he seems to be doing so much at once, but him and his bus team are working so hard, and Neil did before him, on trying to get this through, to try and do the maximum we can with the money that we have, and I want to pay tribute to that. And thank you for your patience on the fact that you don't have that chart in front of you in your papers. It was being produced pretty much right up until the moment the button was pressed yesterday, because this is clearly ongoing, and it's a fluid situation. So thank you. Andrew, are there any final comments you want to make on any of the things you've heard on this?
I think the only point I probably missed was regarding the parish engagement, and that's something I'll take away and to speak with my predecessor about how we can make sure that's effective going forward.
Thank you, and I think that's helpful. I'm aware that probably as well it would be useful, we've mentioned already once the idea of having some offline TIC discussions on some of the issues that have come up today. I think what will be helpful for us is probably as TIC members to talk about what responsibility we can take and what actions we can take to ensure that where we know parishes are very keen to be involved, or where we know there are parishes that should be keen to be involved, that we know how to feed that back in, because we play a really key role as members. We did, I think, ask about CAPALC being involved, and whether we can get something quite strongly embedded around ensuring that they are passing things out to their members. I think that would be helpful. Probably also worth having a chat to South Cambs in a bit more detail, because I know, for example, that South Cambs had a parish council forum at which Dr. Nick was invited to speak. So it might be useful to have a little bit more information from South Cambs about what that model was and how that model can be applied across other areas. I think that will be very helpful. Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on. This is our penultimate substantive item on the agenda, and this is an update on bus reform. I think, Judith, you're going to talk us through this one. Thank you. And again, just to be clear, some of this will be referring to items that have now been published for the board papers. If you do want to open those board papers and have a look and have that in front of you, then do feel free.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, for committee, for accepting a verbal update this morning. And clearly the work on bus reform is absolutely a CPCA priority, and something that we wanted to be able to bring you the latest position and update. So what I'm going to do this morning is to update you verbally using the board paper that was published yesterday afternoon or early evening. And I'll perhaps talk to the recommendations, ask the chair if there's any questions at that point, then talk through the key areas of the paper. Andrew has already covered, of course, the bus network improvements. So I will be focusing on the part of the board paper that relates to bus reform, and obviously happy to take questions and also to feed those back to the board as well through the chair. So you will see in the update paper that is going to the board on the 20th that there's 4 recommendations, and as I say, I'm going to focus on 3 of them. So the first one is around noting the progress in the franchising proposals, including the update on the audit process, and noting that as a result of that process not being closed off as yet, that there will be a decision to bring that final business case with the full findings of the auditor to a board in the summer before a request to move to a public consultation and seek approval for that. The second recommendation is that is requesting the board to approve that officers prepare for an interim enhanced partnership to act as a stepping stone to the further wider reform that franchising could give. Obviously, I can go into more detail shortly. And then the third recommendation will be to note that CPCA is required by the Department for Transport to produce an updated bus service improvement plan, and that will need to be submitted by the 12th of June. So that, and we're asking for delegated approval to allow me to sign that off so that that can go in a timely fashion. But Chair, I'll perhaps just pause there, see if there's any immediate questions, then very happy to go into the rest of the paper.
Thank you, and I have to say that was a remarkably comprehensive summary in such a brief amount of time, so thank you. Questions, comments? Right, so I think I've got Councillor Sharp first, then Councillor Wakeford, and just keep putting your hand up to me if you'd like to be added to the list. Councillor Sharp.
Just 2 very broad questions, I suppose. One is the first one on the updated BSIP, the Bus Service Improvement Plan. Knowing the issues we've had in the past, how ready is that to go, and how realistic is that to get a good plan into government by the 12th of June would be my first comment. And the second thing about and I did see the paper or the thing that got sent out last night, about the interim enhanced partnership. Again, looking at the funding of that, is that going to take away funding if we do that and then we afterwards go down a franchising route? Are we actually using up money that we could have used on franchising? Is that, are we wasting money in the short term we could have spent in the long term? Thank you.
Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. Just to a more basic level, that the change to timescale around the audit will obviously...
Hang on. Judith, you need to turn your mic off. Start again.
Thank you. The extended timescale around the audit is obviously disappointing given the level of ambition we have to move forward with this. But I do think on reflection, the reassurance that CPCA is actually engaging with the audit process as carefully as possible to help ensure it is as defensible and robust as possible, not least given the scrutiny, including of a legal sort, it may come under at later stages. I think that has to be the right decision, and even though it's in the short term a hitch to the timelines, longer term I'm quite confident that is the correct decision.
Councillor MacDonald.
Thanks, Chair. Just following on from that point, we discussed at the last committee the process and timelines for the audit. I do understand it's got to be a really thorough job in terms of all of us being confident in the value for money and the thoroughness. So I agree, whilst we were all looking forward to an update, I do understand why it's taking a little bit longer. Thanks.
Okay.
can I just ask you to clarify, does that mean that the results of the audit will come back to this committee before it goes to Combined Authority Board?
Any other questions at this point? Okay, Judith, are you picking those up?
Apologies for leaving the microphone on. I'm going to have to get more used to the the etiquette of microphones. So on the first issue regarding the Councillor Sharp, which was regarding the resources available for the BSIP process, obviously you'll be aware that we had to submit a BSIP in 2021. And then, indeed, we have since had to refresh that document. So I'm just trying to find the right timing. And had to refresh that document since then. So obviously, what this is a further refresh and development of that document. So we're not starting from scratch. However, there are three components that are required. We have to update the baseline and get the data, but obviously we do hold a lot of that information already, and the work that we've been doing on the preset routes and the network will inform much of that work. We also have to then set out the improvement programme, what we intend to do, and a pipeline of prioritised proposals. So we will be commissioning some additional help to allow us to do that, but we are absolutely confident and are working on the basis that we absolutely will achieve that deadline. We're having regular contact with DFT to support that process, both in terms of talking to them about our progress and also getting the information on how we actually do the work. So it is critical that we do submit in time, and we absolutely will submit in time, because obviously if we don't, that puts further funding at risk. So that's very much a commitment that we have made to achieve that date. Your follow-on question was then related to that kind of resourcing issue on the interim enhanced partnership, and was there a risk that that might take away resourcing? In the short term, there will be an issue about parallel tracking, but obviously, in other words, parallel tracking the steps towards the interim EP alongside continuing to do the franchising work. However, obviously, what we've set out in the details of the board paper is that we are doing at officer level a kind of check and challenge of the process, just to make sure that we are entirely clear that all the necessary steps to jump through the franchising audit process are in place, that we've got all the information we need, and that we can be confident that when we provide further timelines that we are going to be able to hit them. So that piece of work will be done, and then it will be back to the auditors to do the auditing work, and so we can take that through. As I say, there will be some interim, there will be some preparation work in terms of the enhanced partnership, and in the board paper, you'll see there's 8 steps that we need to go through. So we will bring in some additional resource to make sure that we can work through that. But we have sort of, in reflecting on this as officers, we feel strongly on 2 counts that that's really important to do. One, because DFT have an expectation that we now move away from the deregulated status quo to either an EP on a franchise, and are able to give an update on that on the 12th of June when we submit the BSIP. So we need to make sure that we've got a clear narrative for that. And that then links to future resourcing. So obviously one of our goals is to make sure that we jump through the necessary hoops to access the money to bring the greatest benefits to the kind of communities and businesses in this area through the bus reform. So there will be some short-term resource challenges, but we're working through those by bringing some additional people in to make sure that we can focus on delivering the BSIP and delivering the enhanced partnership initial steps as a stepping stone to the longer term objective of getting through the audit on franchising. Councillor Wakeford, you picked up the issues around the timescale. And yes, I mean, having sort of reflected on the process, there's only 2 places in the UK that have actually got to a franchising model, in Manchester and Liverpool. And if it was easy to do this, I expect many other places would have already done it. We also need to recognise that they've done that in an urban environment, and we have clearly, as we've heard this morning, a rural environment. And so We also have a rapidly growing young population, and all of those things bring their own demography, which has an impact on the economic and financial modelling that we're needing to do. And so I think to take the time to make sure that that is understood in the modelling is quite important. And because it is difficult, obviously time needs to be taken. And that then does reflect on Councillor MacDonald's point about value for money, which we have to continue to take and have an eye on. And our at the board, of course, and as part of the report, the Section 73 officer, who's obviously currently Nick Bell, he has to be able to sign off the value for money to the board to ensure that he's comfortable with that. So that continues to be a focus of the work. In terms of your point regarding the timing, obviously we're going to need to continue to work on the timing with the auditors. Obviously, the intention would be to take through all of the necessary committees, but obviously I can't commit to a timeline at the moment because I'm still waiting to hear on the auditors. It may be something that we can explore as we get closer to that timescale being clear.
And I think one of the issues there is that there are slightly more capacity for additional board meetings than there is capacity for additional TIC meetings. So what I think we could and should put down is that we would want, as a committee, to have seen this, and if that can't be done in a standard meeting cycle, then we should have an additional briefing that is arranged to make sure that we go through things so that we are absolutely up to speed. I think that's something that we should make sure is in place. Councillor Shaler, anyone else at this point? Councillor Wakeford? Oh, yeah, so I think you were, it was Councillor Wakeford, Councillor Shaler, anyone else? Councillor Wakeford first, please.
Sorry, Chair, I hope I'm not skipping a queue.
No, I had you on my list as next, so.
Thank you. Just to come back, I think there's a really helpful answers from Judith and the team. I think particularly in terms of the timescale, as I understand, you're making the point quite rightly. It is challenging and ambitious what we're trying to do. Clearly, it's out of our hands that there is a need for more time. This is what engaging with an independent audit process properly looks like. Just to come back on the twin tracking, if that was the term you used, on the enhanced partnership on an interim basis as well as franchising, that was really helpful, which I think was an answer, particularly with reference to the funding, given that was Councillor Sharp's question. I think I've understood, please confirm if not, that essentially what it means is there is not going to be a delay to the franchising as a result of the interim enhanced partnership as well, given the steps that you've outlined. I'm not asking you to repeat all of that, but if fundamentally I've got the gist right, that would be really useful to put on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shaler.
Thank you very much, Chair. I was wondering about how the bus companies feel about this sort of switch from a business point of view. One of the benefits of franchising is that they can do forward planning, and this looks a little bit like switching around. So I wonder if we have any feedback from the companies.
Else?
Thank you, Councillor Wakeford. Certainly it's our intention that we are twin tracking and that there wouldn't be a delay, because we are absolutely aware of the need for the reform, and we are advancing the enhanced partnership model as a stepping stone towards delivering the maximum amount of benefits that we can as an early opportunity, whilst progressing the longer term vision of franchising. The second point regarding the bus companies, the Mayor sent a note to the bus companies, I understand, yesterday afternoon, after all of the necessary steps have been taken to inform board members and so on. I personally haven't received any feedback, but Andrew and I are in regular contact, and obviously there is a bus forum, and I would be expecting that we will be having very urgent conversations with them. Of course, obviously any business will want certainty, and we are in very uncertain times, and this uncertainty isn't particularly helpful. However, We have been working with the Bus Operators Forum. They have been aware of the audit process. They are aware of how these things have gone in other places and the complexity of the process. So we certainly have been trying to keep them informed, and we'll be working with them, because the fundamental platform of the enhanced partnership is that we do work in collaboration to deliver better outcomes for the area. So we'll absolutely be focused on that and talking to the forum on that basis.
Thank you. Any other comments, or does anyone want to come back on anything we've said so far where they want further clarification? I did want to come back, Rebecca. Does the issue around whether this comes formally through a tick, because it's constitutionally it can go, the board is the one that makes the decisions on this, but clearly we all want to ensure that we are fully informed as a tick, and I would count myself in that. Does the suggestion, if needed, of having a additional briefing meet your concerns? Okay, I just wanted to be really clear that I wasn't kind of trying to bump anything through there. Is there anything else? Thank you, and thank you for a really comprehensive piece. And I think those reassurances are particularly helpful, that parallel tracking. Was that a microphone on again there? It was, wasn't it? The reassurances that this parallel tracking process doesn't slow anything down. I'd also want to say thanks in advance again to the bus team for the work that they are doing and will be doing on this. This is why I think there's definitely more than one of Andrew. And probably I think he's cloned all of his team in order to get so much of this done. Thank you for that. We are now, I believe, on the final main item, which is the budget and performance report. I sometimes feel we should put this at the top every so often, just so it doesn't always come right at the end, Tim. So, but Tim Greenwood, our finance manager, will introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm going to put in for higher billing, I think, on the agenda. This is the latest report, budget monitoring report. Starting with the revenue picture, much the same that has been reported before. We're expecting an underspend of somewhere in the region of 1.4 million, which is mainly due to concessionary fares underspending. On to capital programme. There are now a number of programmes that we expect to slip into the next financial year, some of which we've already reported to committee, being the A10, the A141 and the Fletton Footbridge. Some which are attached to the paper you've already seen on this agenda, the TCF paper, those schemes being the A1260 Neen Parkway, the Cambridgeshire TCF funded schemes, Fendgate and March improvements, and there are just some other schemes there that have got some minor delays which have meant that some spend will slip into the following financial year. I'll take any questions if there are any.
Any questions? Okay, which I'd say is testimony to the thoroughness of your report, so thank you for that. If I could be a bit naughty and just, I meant to say on the previous agenda item, obviously can we make sure that ONS are involved as appropriate on this as well, because they play a really key part alongside members of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee in ensuring that really appropriate scrutiny takes place on such an important item. Okay, so we are now at the Transport and Infrastructure Committee agenda plan. This is item 13. Or possibly, yeah, that is item 13, isn't it? Are there any questions or comments on this item? Okay, so we then go on to the date of the next meeting, which will be which is Wednesday, the 26th of June at 10 a.m. Do we have a venue for that yet? It's going to be in the new meeting room in Huntingdon. Okay, so that will be at Huntingdon District Council. Okay, thank you very much. I now declare that meeting closed. Can you let us know when you have, is someone here to close the live stream? We're just pausing for the live stream to be closed. I thought perhaps